but I wanted to copy it to the front end of the other one. But since I was using the same counter for both, I was copying it from the end of one to the end of the other. You see what I'm saying? So if I have, I'll just make it real simple. If I had 5 numbers, say, let's say it's already in ascending order. So 3, 8, 23, 37, and 5, or 51. That's good. All right, so I've got these 5 numbers. What I wanted to do, though, is I wanted to take this one and move it to here, this one and move it to here, etc. Does that make sense? But what I was doing, since I used the same counter LCV for both, I was creating a new array, but instead of copying 51 to here, I was copying it to here. So I was copying it right to the end. So what I did was I made a couple changes, and I'll give you hard copies of these when we get done. Okay. So I made another counter. All right. Now, this is the longest for loop I think I've ever written in my life. First thing I did, notice I came in here. Originally it said LCV less than like length minus 1. Now imagine that we had an array and that array had in a million elements. Let's even say a billion elements, okay? Because it would be possible to write a program with something like that. If I made a test in here that said keep going until max minus 1, it would run that a billion times. Max minus 1 is always going to be equal to the same thing, always. So why do that inside the loop, which is what I was doing before, and make the system do, it's like walking up to the same light switch and constantly turning it on, even after it's already on. So I now have 2 different counters. One that goes literally from 24 to 0, and one that goes from 0 to 24. Does that make sense? All right. And I'm saying check, and as long as neither of the counters have finished their end, subtract from the one counter because I'm going downwards, add to the other counter because I'm going upwards. So what you'll see now, I'll come right back to this, but so you'll see now, just so you see the whole program. Now when I come in here and I put in a 1, there's my numbers. All right, I put in a 2. And there they are in the original order. I put in a 3. There they are in ascending order. So notice 2, 5, 5, 6, and it ends with 95, 85. Now when I put in a 4, 95, 85, 6, 5, 5, 2. See that? All right. The code was right. The check that I put in was incorrect. All right. Again, that's on me for rewriting this thing instead of giving you what I had originally worked. All right. So what's left? Display the smallest, display the largest, display the sum, and display the average. Okay? Let's do the largest. So I'm going to come down to the bottom. This will be a public void. Display smallest element. And underneath that one, I'm going to have my public void display largest element because they're going to be virtually the same. Except one's looking for the biggest and one's looking for the smallest. All right. So how do we do that? Well, one way of doing it, there's more than one way. Okay, did you hear me? There's more than one way of doing it. One way we could do it is we could loop through the entire array and look at every one. Would you agree with that? We could do that. Okay. But we've already got a thing that will sort our array. Would you agree? We've already got this? Since we've already got that, what if we call sort ascending right here? And then all we do in here is just do a J option pane of the 0th element. Does that make sense? All right. copy 0. Now it's giving me an error. Let's see. Oh, I need null in front of that. All right, and my semicolon at the end. Now, I'll come right back to it, but let's see if it works. So 1, there's my numbers. Now you can tell by looking at it, I'm taking a very quick look, there's a 2 in there. That looks like the smallest one. You see that 2 about 3 or 4 from the end? All right. So let's put, we won't even call it first to put it in ascending order. We'll just do a 5 for the smallest element. And it's not printing anything. Okay, that's a problem. Sort ascending. Sort ascending, we have to let it know what array we want it to be using. Num copy. All right, but sort ascending does not require it anything. So what I just told you may not work. Sort ascending accepts nothing. Arrays.sort of num copy. Okay, so that should work. So we do not want this. J option pane. Smallest element is num copy 0. Why isn't that printing? J option pane, show message dialog. No. The smallest element is, that actually looks correct to me. Let's save it and try it again. 1. Now I've got an array. Okay. 2, there's the array. 3, there it's ascending. 4, there it's descending. 5. It's not printing anything. All right. I mean, this, like it or not, this is what being a programmer is about. All right. Calling sort ascending, and what is sort ascending? Is that calling something afterward? No, just calling arrays.sort. And that doesn't return anything. Well, for now, I'm gonna print this. I'm trying to find out where the error is. Oh, wait a minute. I had commented that out before. The call to this I had commented out in here. See this? I commented that out in mine. I'm never calling it. That's why mine wasn't working. So let's see if it will display the smallest element. All right, so 1, there's my array. The smallest element, taking a quick look. I think it's 10. I think it's right there. Okay, I changed it to just the word hello, so it should be printing it out. That's good. So now I can get rid of all this. right, there's an 8 in there. That looks like the smallest. 8. All right, so that works. That's good. All right. The largest is going to be similar, but I don't think it's going to be identical. So we want to do, if we call sort descending, it should grab this, it should grab that. Let's see, it'll print out. We can just do the same thing, but we'll print out the last element. All right, we want the largest element. So if we do num copy of max minus 1, that's going to print the last element. Does that make sense to you? Keegan, does that make sense? Let's see if that works. All right, there it is. So the smallest should print out as 9, and the largest looks like it's 98. 9. Oh, I commented that line out too. Okie dokie. So there's the largest one. Display largest. I think I spelled it incorrectly down here. I thought I saw it. Yep. Largest. Now try it again. Largest. Come on. There. All right. 1, 4. So it should be 2 and 95, what should print out. There's the 2, there's the 95. Okay? All right. So what's left? The sum is pretty simple. I think you get that. So what do we call that down here? First, let me uncomment that. Display sum of elements, but I'm going to call true. And the other one is going to be the false one. Probably should have reversed those. Screw it. I'm just, pardon my French, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So public void display sum of elements. This one should go real fast. 4, we'll put a for loop in here. Let's grab that same loop we had before, this one. Okay, don't worry about output. We're going to fix that right now. Int sum equals 0. This is going to be num copy. So is this. This is going to be sum. And then we will put in a J option pane when we get done. So the sum of all array elements is in just sum. Now, I don't know if you agree with this or if this makes sense to you. When we do the average next, the average should typically be around 50. Does that make sense? It should typically be around 50. All right? And if you take 50 and multiply it by 25, so if I added 50 25 times, the sum should be something around 1250, somewhere around there. Every time I run this, it should be something like that. It might be a little higher, it might be a little lower. It doesn't really matter. But all I'm trying to tell you is, if we get a number like 1,000,000, there's a problem. If we get a negative number, it's a problem. If we get a number between 1,000 and 2,000, it should be working correctly. Does that make sense to both of you? All right, so let's run this. Oh, now it's got an error. Oh, I've got the true and the false in there. You know what? I'm going to change that to false, and I'm going to change that one to true. All right, and now what we have to put in here into our sum, we've got to put a Boolean in there. And we have to tell, where is it? Whether it's true or false. See that? So Boolean, do the AVG, do the averaging. Okay? All right, we'll come right back to this. Let's just run it. I want it to run. So 1. So let's put it in the right order. Oops. There it is in descending. There it is in ascending. Okay. There's our biggest one. There's our smallest one. There's our sum. You see it's 1160. That looks pretty good to me as far as I can tell. So the only thing that's left is to do the average. Now, when I do the average, I only, really what I need to do is I need to call sum. I need to call the sum and do the sum. I could just do the sum every time. Would you agree with that? I could just do that every time. And I can just leave it like that. Okay, I changed this. I did come back and change it. And I made it false right there. And now I'm going to make it true. Why? Because the variable I called is do the average. See that? So that's, I do want to do the average. So I'm going to come down here. It's going to be simple. It's like 3 or 4 more lines and we're finished. So there's the sum. If display, what do we call it? Do the average, I'm sorry. If do the AVG. So if we passed it in and it's true, how do you do an average? Well, you know how to do an average. Okay, double AVG equals 0.0, right? And then we come in here and we say AVG equals the sum, which we now have, divided by the number of elements. All right, what's the number of elements? Well, the number of elements is max divided by 25. The problem with this is it's an int divided by an int. See this? It's going to throw away any decimal place. So let's come in here and we'll say this is a double. That's casting right there. Now that's all fine, but unless I do a J option pane, you're not going to see it anyway. So now I can say the average of all array elements is AVG. So we've got sum and we've got average. Okay? Again, let me run it, make sure it works, and I'll give you the code if you want. So this is called, why am I getting an error here? Display AVG of elements. Oh, you know what? We're not calling that anymore. We're calling this. In both cases now, we're calling display sum of elements. All right. Again, I'll give you a hard copy. So 1, 2, 3, there it is in ascending order, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now think about this. Okay, I'm going to do this first. Look on the screen if you would. The sum is 1276 in the example that I just did. All right, so if I'm doing this right now and I do 1276 and I divide it by 25, that should be my average. Makes sense? All right, so we'll see if indeed that's what it does. And look, another mistake I made, that should be an 8. See that? But I made it a 9, so that's fine. Except it's not going to work because it's going to call, it's expecting an 8, and I've got a 9 here, so that's going to blow up too. Make that an 8, save it, run it again. 1, there they are. All right, let's just see what the sum is and the average. So the sum is 1382, So that's going to be bigger than before. That's going to be about 53 or something like that. And the average, well, that's the sum. And there's the average. Okay? So, 0. So for part of your homework, I want you to clean this up. Technically, we don't need these two anymore. Would you agree with that? We're never using them. See how they're gray? And we really don't even need these. We're not using these in here. Anything that's gray, you should be looking through. And if you can get rid of it, get rid of it. All right? You probably both have just about all of the program. And what I'll do here, I think it'll let me print from here. I've not tried to print from this new version here of IntelliJ. I'm not going to print from here. I'll print it right now, though, before we even go on. So let me grab all of this. See, I'll throw it on a flash drive. All right, we're going to look at the BMI one now, and I'm not going to jack with it. I'll just leave the BMI one that I have. Okay, hopefully there aren't any mistakes in it. I don't believe there are. I ran it earlier, and it ran just fine. Okay. So, do it, save all if you haven't done one lately, and let's close the project and let's start a new project. Did either one of you start the BMI project? So if you did, you're going to want to call the next one BMI 2 or something like that, so you've got yours. If you haven't started it yet, then just do new project. You know the routine by now. I'm just going to call this BMI. All right, and finish. When it comes up, I'm again going to right mouse click on my source, add my new package, not a class, add my new package. And we're going to have two classes in here. We're going to have BMI driver, and we're going to have BMI. I'm not going to write the driver right now. The driver is going to be much bigger than it was before. We're going to instantiate or create a bunch of BMI objects. Okay. Now, we're going to write this, and we're going to write this more similar to what we looked at yesterday. In other words, we're going to write it like a Java program. We're going to have a set first name, a get first name, a set last name, a get last name, a set height, a get height, and a set weight and a get weight. All that makes sense? All right. And we're going to test the different cases to make sure. We're also going to in here write our own exceptions. So if you put in a height that's out of range or a weight that's out of range, there's a number format exception, right? You've just seen that. We really should have ran that before, but you understand what that is. But what if I put in there 1,000,000 pounds for somebody? Technically, the program, I mean, we could put in if statements and stuff. We can do that, or we can throw exceptions. Now, I'm having you throw exceptions if you put bad stuff in there. That's pretty extreme. And what I mean is, when we're throwing exceptions, typically it stops the program. But I want you to be able to see what it's like to have your own exceptions. The reason for that is, when you start working on Android stuff, I mean, you may very well just have, you look through there and there's no Java exception that's like this. I'd like to call an exception and there isn't one. Then you write your own. All right. Plus, just imagine for a second that what we were doing is we were doing a program for a gym. With me? And let's say that we care about a lot more than BMI. We care about BMI. We care about height, weight. We care about first name, last name. But there's other stuff too. All right. So the reason I'm telling you that is what we've been doing so far is either in our main program, our driver, or the regular main program itself, we've been putting in all of our constants. But what if we do that and we've got constants like what we're going to look at tomorrow, again, is we're going to go back to that payroll. We're going to have 4 different kinds of employees. We could have constants in each one of those, but it starts to get real unwieldy. It'd be nice if we could put all of our constants in one place, even if we had a bunch of different classes. That's what we're going to do now, because we're going to create yet another kind of file in here. All right, what do I mean? I'll just show you right now. All right, so far we've got in here our BMI driver, and we've got our BMI program file. But we're going to right mouse click on here again, and we're going to choose new and Java class. But this time, we're going to choose interface. What an interface is it's a way, it does 2 things. First of all, do you remember this? I'm asking you this question. When we were working in C#, and we didn't look much at it, but we looked a little bit at inheritance, when one class inherits from another. All right. In most programming languages, like C# and like Java, you can only inherit from one parent. You don't have 2 parents, you have one. And that parent has one parent, and it keeps going all the way up to the top. In Java, at the top, it's called object. Okay? All right. But sometimes you want to be able to inherit from more than one thing. You just told us we can't. You can. Because what you inherit from is not a class. You inherit from classes, but you can implement as many interfaces as you want to or need to. And why would you want to do that? Well, what if I come up with something later and it really doesn't belong inside of a class that I'm inheriting from? The information is just so different, there's no reason it should be in there. but I do want to inherit from it, then I make it an interface. So that's what we're going to do right now. And if you don't get it, bear with me for a little bit. So make sure here you choose interface. All right, so we chose a new one here. We're going to put an interface. One thing about interfaces, it's not a law. The program will work fine if you don't do this. But by and large, interfaces always start with the letter I, a capital I. That shows that they're an interface. All right. So typically I would do like IBMI like that, but I don't want to do that. Then everything that's in there is capitalized. This already is, and that can be confusing to people. So I'm going to call it IBMI, but I'm going to make the B, the M, and the I lowercase. You don't have to do that. You could make them all uppercase. The program would work just fine. I'm just telling you, it would work just fine. We're not going to do it that way. And what you find is if you do this stuff long enough, that you're going to find people who will do it the way I just showed you, and people will say, no, you're wrong. I do it exactly the other way. It just depends. All right. So when I do this and I hit enter, notice what I get, public interface. All right. It doesn't say class. You cannot compile this file. This file gets added to the rest of your program. All right. So what am I going to put in there? I'm going to put in all of my class constants. Now I could put other stuff in there, but for now it's just going to hold class constants. All right. And I've got, oh, I don't know. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 constants. All right. And every one of them, I want to put the word final in front. First one is going to be a string, and it's going to be called def first name. It's my default first name. Okay. And I'm going to call it FNU for first name unknown. You've seen this before. Then I'm going to have another one. These are the only two strings. It's going to be my def last name. And I'm going to set that to LNU for last name unknown. Those are the only two string constants I'm going to have. All right. Then I'm going to have a min height and a max height. So, I'm sorry, final int min height. And we'll say the minimum height that somebody can be is 12 inches. It's going to be a program with inches. And the max height is going to be 96. I mean, that's 8 feet. And I don't think there's anybody that's ever been that's taller than that. Okay? But we're also going to come in here. I don't know if we'll use it or not, but we're going to have one more. We're going to call it def height. That's going to be our default height. All right? And we'll just make that 72. We could make it, there's nothing special about that number. Now we're going to do the same thing with weight. So I'm just going to copy these. And I'm going to have min weight, max weight, and default weight. All right. And my minimum weight will be a pound, 1 pound. My maximum weight, well, 777. I know you know, all the kidding aside, you maybe have seen those shows, you know, my 600-pound life or whatever the hell it's called. My wife watches some of that stuff. It grosses me out. She watched one day, I watched Dr. Pimple Popper with her. Oh my God, never again, never. And I'm going to set the default weight, I don't know. I'm just going to make it 175. So 175. All right, so that's my default weight. Yeah, did I miss it? Yeah, there's a couple more. So that's default weight. All right, so I now have a default first name, a default last name, a default height, a default weight, plus minimums and maximums for height and weight. Okay? All right. Now, you may remember this, you may not, and Keegan, it'd probably be more you because you did more. Did you do any BMI stuff? Did we do any before? No. Okay. Okay. But the numbers are the same. In other words, if you're less than 18.5, you're underweight. And if you're between 18.5 but you're under 25, you're optimal weight. All right. And if you're over 25 but under 30, you're overweight. And if you're over 30, you're obese. Okay. So when we look at this, there's a reason I want to show you. So again, less than 18 is underweight. All right. 18 to less than 25 is optimal weight. 25 to less than 30 is overweight. And over 30 is obese. All right. I don't like any of those, those terms, etc., but we're just going to deal with what we have. Okay. So when we look in here, what I care about is what is the minimum optimal weight? That one. I don't care about underweight, because if it's less than the minimum optimal, you have to be underweight. Make sense? All right. So I care about that one. So the first one I'm going to make in here is going to be a double, and I'm going to call it min optimal, and I'm going to set that equal to 18.5. I need to make that a double because of the 0.5, okay? I'm going to have another one. I'm going to call it min over, and that's going to be set equal to 25.0. Finally, I'm going to have one last one, and that's going to be called min obese, and that's going to be set equal to 30.0. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best program ever and you should, etc. These are what I chose to use. Okay? So we now have that. All right. That's it for the interface. So the driver we will do last. Let's go to the actual program now. So let's go to BMI.java. We've got this. We will not, are you all getting the fact, since this is not a driver, we will not have a main in here. We will have a main in our driver. There's nothing magical about the name driver, but typically people put the word driver in there on whatever one is going to actually be the one that has a main. All right. Now, we want to actually make a change in here. If we were working with C#, okay, and we were doing inheritance, you'd put a colon here and then what class you're inheriting from. If you do it in Java, you use the word extends for inheritance. You'll see that tomorrow. But we're doing an interface. You extend with inheritance. You do implements when you do an interface. So what that line of code right there that we just put in, what that did was it made all of those constants available to our program. Does that make sense to you? So if I come in here now, look, if I type in min obese, okay, or whatever the heck it is, it should be able to handle that. All right. Okay. So you can go back to over where I gave you, I don't even know where it was, the specs. You could put the specs into one of these files as a comment. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but you get what I'm talking about. All right, you should do something like that. So let's come in here and let's do our class variables. If you remember, when we did this last time, we had a bunch of constants first. When we went in Java something, so to speak. We don't have to do that now because it's in a different file. All right, so we're going to do our class variables. And we're actually going to have 6 of them. All right, private string first name, private string last name, private double height, private double weight, private double BMI, and we'll also figure out the person's status. We've got all that stuff now. So private string BMI status. Now again, I was talking to the first year people this morning because we've already been writing programs in there. The order in which you put those variables that I just showed you doesn't matter. If you decide you want BMI status to be under last name because they're both strings, you can do that. I put them in this order because that's how we're going to define a person. First name, last name, height, and weight. That's why I put them in that order. But you didn't have to do it in that order. All right. So now I'm going to put in here non-class variables, or variable. It's just going to be the one. Private static. We're going to get an error on this. It'll immediately be fixed. Decimal format. We'll call it pattern equals new. That's decimal format, not form. Sorry. Equals new decimal format. We're going to make this simple. Pound, 0.00. If you've got a BMI, that would give you a BMI up to 999. Not to be mean, but if you had a BMI of 999, you'd be dead. Actually, if you had a BMI of 99, you probably would be in really bad health. But we're just going to leave it like that. All right. So you've seen this before. Notice if I put my mouse over here, it says cannot resolve the symbol. Do you want to import the class? Yes, we do. It says then hold down on the Alt key, hold down on the Shift key, and hit the Enter key, and it added this for us. Again, did we have to do that? Of course not. We didn't have to do it that way at all. To me, it did make sense kind of to do it that way. Okay? All right. So you may or may not remember this. Typically, the pattern, the way that we do this, and I should say pattern there, not patter, but you can say patter. It doesn't matter. Okay. But typically, the first thing you put in there is your constructor. You with me? Okay. So I am going to put in a constructor, but then we're going to go back like we did the other day, and we're going to add those getters and setters. All right. But the reason I'm telling you that is I'm going to get errors now because I'm going to be calling routines that don't exist yet. Okay, so I'm going to say in here, this will first be my noarg constructor. So that'll just say public BMI. All right. Now, I'm going to write this, but then I'm going to come back up and I'm just going to add a little bit in just a second. So if you say what, just bear with me. So I'm going to say the first name equals that default. See that? See how it's grabbing it from that file? See that, Keegan? All right. And that's because we did that implements. Last name equals def last name. Height equals def height. Weight equals def weight. Now, we didn't get any errors there because I just decided to use the default, so we wouldn't get any errors. But we are going to get errors when we do the other constructor because we're going to call set routines, and they don't exist yet. Everybody hear me? All right. So that's going to be our noarg constructor. Then we're going to do a full arg constructor. The noarg means there's nothing in here. You with me? There's nothing in there. The full arg means there will be something in there. Since it's full arg, we're going to pass 4 things in. A first name, a last name, a height, and a weight. With me? All right. So another public, BMI, and now we're going to have in here, we're getting an error right now because it sees these two right now look exactly the same. So we'll put a string in here for first name, a string in here for the last name, a double in here for the height, and a double in here for the weight. And again, we're going to get errors here, but I'm going to call set first name. I'm going to pass in, what do we call that? FN. We'll get these errors will all be fixed in a minute. Set last name. We're going to pass in LN. Set height, and we'll pass in H. Set weight, and we'll pass in W. All right. And we're going to fix these up too. But before we go, we're going to add the getters and setters. Then we're going to come back to these to these, both of these constructors, okay? So everybody, I'll give you a second. Don't type like your hair is on fire or something. I just want to make sure you got enough time. You all caught up, Keegan? Right, you caught up? All right. So I'm down here. So I'm under my constructor. I'm right there. And you've seen this before. I'm going to do code, generate, and I'll do getter and setter. And I'm going to choose first name, hold down on the shift, last name, height, and weight. Not BMI, not BMI status. The program's going to figure those out. All right, and I'm going to click OK in just a minute. I want to make sure you're both caught up, though. And then I went to generate. Code, generate. Okay. Oh, I've seen that. It worked when you did it last time, correct?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
All right. And I also have
And those, they may be connected.
okay.
So, oh, that's it. You've got to call this BMI01. It's got to be the same name as that thing.
Okay. Same here.
Now try your
Okay.
generate, see if it finds it.
There we go. Okay, and then what do we do after that?
After you, I'm going to do it because I have no idea.
Okay.
So we're going to do a code, generate. We're going to choose getter and setter. Again, you could do them individually, but I'm just going to do them all together. And you want to choose first name, last name, height, and weight. Do not choose BMI. Do not choose BMI status. Do not choose pattern. All right, just these four. Click OK. All right. They're now all in there, and our errors are gone. Make sense? All right. Now, we got a decision to make, okay? And what I mean is, what we can do if we want to is we can force there being a right value in there. In other words, we can come in here when you do your height and your weight, okay? For our, let's grab this one. For our set height, we can do exactly what we did last time. In other words, if they put in a number that's greater than the minimum height, or a number that's less than the max, or less than the minimum or greater than the maximum, we can do that. We can just set it to the default. That's really why I put a default in there. Or we can be really extreme. And we can, I think we'll write this twice, and it'll be almost the same program. Right now, that's what we'll do. And then when we come back later, what we'll do is we'll write exceptions. All right, so when you get done with this program, we're going to make a copy of it, basically, because it's going to be almost the same program, but we'll add exceptions. So you can see it done both ways, is what I'm saying. All right, so now we come in here and we start to think. Virtually 100% of the time, you're never going to change your getters. There's not a reason to. It's just getting information. Does that make sense? Now, you will change your setters if you would want to do any kind of validation, and we do here. All right, so we're going to say this dot first name, and what we're going to do is we're going to check, and we're going to come in here and say if the first name dot equals and we've got a not there. What this means in English, what this means is if there's something in there, doesn't matter what it is, if there's something in there, all right, that's going to become their first name. Question mark, first name, colon, otherwise we're going to use the default first name. Now look at that. And if you have a question, ask. We could have written this at least two different ways. We could have reversed our logic. Okay, and we could have said, basically, like I said, turn it around. This says, if this does not equal the empty string, meaning there's something in there. Does that make sense? All right, and I don't even know if we can do this. I was just going to check. I have no idea if what I'm about to do will work. That's even better. Not with two periods. And we need paren. That's even better. Why? Yeah. Now if they happen to hit the space bar twice, okay, it's still going to be empty. So that's cleaner. Make sense? All right. Virtually, we want to do the same thing for the last name. So just copy it down. Put that in here. That ends up, make sure you change every instance of the word first to the word last and make it def last name. Does everything I just did make sense? All right. Now, sometimes you've heard me say this before, but I want to show you something. Don't change yours. I'm going to change mine, but I'm going to just change it back again. All right. So I'm going to grab this whole thing in here, this whole thing that I just did, and I'm going to copy it again. I'm going to comment it out. You're like, what the hell are you doing? Just trust me, okay? For a second here. I want to put it in there. I want to show you, had we come in here and just, for example, said LN instead of L. If we had done that, then you wouldn't need this. This could have been LN. This could have been LN. Now, the reason I'm showing you that is, do you understand why some people don't like to use the same parameter name as the actual class name? Because to many people, this reads better. Because what we have is last name, last name, last name, last name. And many people find that confusing. As I said, if you put it in like this and you give it a different name, then you don't need the word this. You can put it in, it won't hurt anything. But then you can see exactly over here, we're dealing with this thing. So you pick out the one that's easier for you to understand, and that's the one you should be using. Again, I've said this before, it's not a joke, it isn't funny. It's not like there's any Java police that are out there that make you do it one way or the other way. You do it the way that makes most sense to you. I will tell you that from the little bit I've dealt with Java programmers, they do it the way I'm showing it to you right up here, the regular way we've been doing it. All right? Whether, again, that's right or whether that's wrong. That's just the way they seem to do it. All right. Let's see. Now, we could come in here for our height and our weight for our set, and we could do another one of these question mark colon operators. All right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab this line of code right now. For now, I'm going to comment it out. And I'm going to say if the height is, now, what do you want to do? Do you want to say if it's within range or if it's not in range? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm going to check for in range. To me, it makes sense to check for good stuff. All right? So if height is greater than or equal to the min height and height is less than or equal to the max height, what do we know? I'm asking you that question. If this case is true, what do we know? Do you understand the question? If this if is true, what do we know? It's what? They entered a valid number. Correct. So we can do this. Whoops. Oh, what the heck did I just do? Hold on. There we go. I just hit the wrong key, that's all. Else, going by what you just said, Angie, we know they entered an invalid number. So we're just going to set it to the default. All right, this dot height equals def height. That makes sense? And then I'm going to grab all the code I just put in, and I'm going to copy it down to weight, and I'm going to change all the heights to weights. Oops, that out there. So I'm going to grab all of this, and I'm going to just put it in here. But I'm going to change all these to W's. W, 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 W. Now my question is, does that make sense to both of you? All right. So right now, to my knowledge, we've got of our variables that we had up here, those are all accounted for. What we have not yet accounted for is the BMI and the BMI status. Okay? All right. In order to be able to do the BMI, we need the height and the weight. But we made those class variables, so we have those anyway. Does that make sense? It's not like we have to do anything special for those. Okay? So we're going to have, we'll make that a get. Public void. In fact, it'll be a double because we're going to print it out. Double get BMI. All right. And what is that? Well, we're going to return get weight, and we divide that by, now we could say get.height times get.height, or we can square it, if you remember the formula for that. So I'm going to say math.pow get height, paren, paren, comma 2, paren, paren, times 703.0. That's the formula. Just go ahead and put that in because I want to say something about it, okay? I put the 0.0 on the end because I want to make sure that it comes back with a decimal place. Because everything else in their height and weight are both integers. So if your BMI was 24 point, we're rounding it to two decimal places, but if your BMI was 24.99, we're now going to be rounding it to 25. See what I'm saying? So it could have a saying as to whether you're underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese. All right, because we're doing rounding. All right, the other thing we want to do is we want to be able to get our status. So this will be a public string, and we'll call this get BMI status. All right. And let me just hit enter a few times just so I can move this up on the screen. Okay. All right. And we'll have a string in here. I'm just going to call it S. You call it whatever you want, doesn't matter. And a double the BMI equals, how am I sure I'm going to have the right BMI all of the time? Did you hear my question? How am I sure? Can't I right now call get BMI right there? So now I'm sure I've got the current most up-to-date BMI there is. Okay? And I got to do a big if. So if the BMI, whatever we called it, if it's less than the optimal, the minimum optimal, not min obese, min optimal, All right. If it's less than that, then we know it's less than 18. We already said that means you're underweight. So S equal underweight. Else, if the BMI is less than, the BMI is less than min over, then S is equal to optimal weight. Otherwise, if the BMI is less than min obese, you're overweight. And we could make another check here, but all I'm going to say is, as far as I can tell, we've handled all the other cases except obese. We've handled underweight, we've handled optimal weight, we've handled overweight. So the only thing that's left, in my opinion, is obese. So I'm just going to make that an else. So that's our get BMI status. All right. And again, if you look on here, the BMI, the status basically is being set in a routine called get. But there's no get and set for this, is what I'm telling you. All right, could we make one? The answer is yes, but you typically don't do it that way. The stuff you're calculating, you don't want that what's called stale data, so you typically do it like this. Now, there's only one thing left, and you may or may not remember this from when we did our last regular Java program, and that is we have to overload the toString method. So all we've got in here is we had to create a toString method that'll have 5 or 6 lines in it. But I want to make sure, have you both caught up? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to put that then down at the bottom. Oh, there's a problem though. I'm getting this here. I've got to return the string when I'm done. So return S. Then the error goes away. Okay? So when we call this in just a minute, we're going to call this in toString. It should either say the person's underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese. Does that make sense? All right. So we've got one more routine to run right in here. Public, string with a big S, toString. String, I just called it output str. You can call it whatever you want. And let's start it out by making it equal to the empty string. And I'll just, so I can have all this stuff line up pretty, plus, output str plus equals, and I'm going to say, just to do it a little bit differently so you can see this, I'm going to say \n name, and what are we going to call here? Get first name plus a blank space plus get last name. Then we'll do the height. Now this is going to look a little bit funky. And we're going to call get height here plus, and I'm going to put inches. So, if I ask you how tall you are, Angie, and let's say you're 5.5 feet tall, that's probably what you're going to tell me. You're not going to go, I'm 66 inches. You know what I mean? But that's what our program is going to say. You could do the math if you wanted to do the math. So you could divide by 12 and then use the modulo operator if you wanted to do that. All right, I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. I think that's okay like that. Again, if you disagreed and you wanted to change it, yeah, go to it. Pounds is pretty much pounds. The thing about this is if you ever go online and you look at BMI, they'll use things, they'll have it where you can do it both in American measurements. You know, we are about the only country, they say, not using the metric system. So they'll have it in there with both. You could do that if you wanted to. You could ask the person when they were inputting what they wanted to input. You see what I'm saying? You can extend the program any way you want to extend it, is what I'm saying. All right. So we're still not done. We got all that. Oh, your BMI, or the BMI would be better, maybe. The BMI. Now we're going to use pattern here, so we have it to 2 decimal places. So pattern.format, get BMI. And then finally, our status. And we'll have to return the status, but that's fine. We'll do that next. And then finally, we return our output string. Unless I miss something, which is always possible with me. To my knowledge, though, we're done with this part of the program. We're not finished, period, but we're done with this part of the program. All right? Now, what we do is we go over now, and we're going over to our driver. Okay? We're going over to the driver. So, if you haven't saved this in a while, I haven't. So I'm going to do a file save all. I'm not going to run it yet. It wouldn't run anyway because I have nothing in the driver. All right, so I'm going to go over to my driver. As you'd probably guess, the first thing that I'm going to do in here is my PSVM, public static void main. Now, when I did mine, just so you know, I did them all with system.out.printlines. You with me? So it's going to print down here. You want to change it, change it. You want to keep it the way it is, keep it the way it is. All right, plus, you know, when I was doing this, sometimes I write code late at night, so I'm going to use the names I used. For instance, I've got Skinny Sue, Default Don, Overweight Ollie, and Obese Olga. You know, just so you knew, I kept the letters the same. I know those are stupid names. If you don't like them, use anybody you want. Doesn't really matter. So now later, we're going to put this into a try-catch block so we can do our exception handling. But right now, we haven't built that in yet. So we're just going to do it the way it is. So I'm going to come in here and say BMI. All right, and default Don equals new BMI. And we're not going to pass in anything, nothing. Okay? Now we're going to say system.out.println, default Don. We're going to do this one a little bit differently. Play computer right now. All right, tell me when you're caught up. Are you all caught up, Keegan? Are you all caught up, Angie? Okay. When we call this one, we're passing nothing. Would you agree? So since we're passing nothing, when it goes into here, it should be calling our noarg constructor. So it should print out there that default Don's first name is FNU for first name unknown. Default Don's last name is LNU for last name unknown. Default Don's default height is 72 inches. And default Don's weight is whatever we made. It was 175 or something like that. Does that all make sense? So let's see if that indeed is the case. So I'm going to do a file save all. I'm going to go back to the driver, and I'm going to run this. And there it is. 72, 175. Those were our defaults. It figured out our BMI based on those defaults to be 2373, which is less than 25, but greater than or equal to 18, so it's optimal. Does that make sense? So at least that guy worked, okay? Now, before we even create another one, let's do this. Let's do a default Don dot set first name, and let's set his first name to Donald. Probably figure out what's happening here. And we'll do another default Don dot set last name. Yeah, I know it's stupid, but we'll make it Duck. And we'll do a default Don dot set height. Let's make him 5 feet tall. So that'll be 60. And we'll do a default Don dot set weight. And let's make him heavy. We'll make him 222 pounds. All right. Probably is going to be obese, to be honest with you. And then we're going to print them out again. You with me there? All right. Now, look on the screen. Just for now, I don't need this one anymore. I know that one worked, but I don't want to remove it. So I'm just going to comment that one out. Did you see that? You don't have to do that, but yours is going to print twice if you don't. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run this again. And I can already see that for my weight, did I make it 60? No, I must be calling get height there instead of get weight on mine. So there's a problem. That's why you test. So it's I want to go into, it's got to be in my, into my toString function. You probably didn't do it, but see, notice I've got, let's see. That doesn't look like it. So what did I put there? Set height, set weight. Min weight, max weight, min height, max height. I mean, something in here is wrong. I'm just trying to figure out right now what it is. So let's see. Let's look at the get weight program, or the set weight. If it's within range, look, see this? I missed one of my W's. See that? That's got to be a W. That was on me. Mine had a W there, or an H there rather. Yours may have it as well. You have to, if we're working with weight, they got to both be weights. So let's save it and try it again. I mean, those are the kind of mistakes everybody makes them. All right. Still doesn't like it. Still says it's 60. Because I missed another one. That one should be W. And I miss any more. W, 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 W. Look at the other one. H, 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 H. That should be correct. There you go. Okay. Now, what we should do is run cases like that for everybody. But just to keep it simple for now at least, I'm going to go back to my driver, and I'm going to create a few more of these. Okay, so my next one was BMI, oops, not BMI, and I called it Skinny Sue. All right, and I said equals new BMI, and I gave her a first name of Skinny. And I gave her a last name of Sue. You could always change that. I mean, I hopefully you don't find that offensive. And 66 and 100. Now, at 100 pounds at 5'6", Skinny Sue should be underweight. But I'm going to run it again just to be sure. So if you look on the screen now, I'm going to take my default on my other one. I'm going to comment that out. You don't have to do that. All right. Once they're all working, I'm going to uncomment all that stuff so they all print. but I want to see what it says just for Skinny Sue. Okay, see that? Her BMI is 16.14. That's good. So now what I've done so far is I did my default, my NOR constructor. I also checked my set height, my set weight, etc. Okay? Now, I got a question for you. What if I did this? What if I did these? See this? If I set that to 600 and I set that to, what's going to happen? No. What did we put in here? If it's not within range, set it to the default. It already was the default to begin with, so you would never have even known. See what I'm saying? All right. So, but I just wanted you to see that. So when you are going through and you're testing all of this stuff, what you really want to do is you want to test every possible combination, permutation, or whatever that you can think of. All right. Okay. So I'm now going to comment out my line with Skinny Sue, just the print line, and I'm going to come up with another one. So this is going to be Optimal Ollie. And I know with an optimal, whoops, I don't know what I just did there. I know because I've run this program enough that if I make him around 70 inches tall and about 160 pounds, that should be in the optimal range. Okay? I could be wrong there, but I think that one should work out okay. So I'm going to check that to be sure and see if indeed Ollie is optimal. And he is. See that right here? All right, so I've got that one. We'll do 2 or 3 more, and then we'll be finished. Because next, what I should be checking is, so what? We did underweight, we did optimal weight. Now let's do an overweight. And that was, of course, overweight Oscar. And I made that another new BMI with the first name overweight and the last name Oscar. And I'm going to make him 70 inches, so he's 5'10" and 200 pounds. And again, a system .out print line of overweight Oscar. Again, I'm going to come back to where I was here previously, and that is what I did there, I don't know. I'm going to comment out the line above that Optimal Ollie that we just did. I'm going to save, and I'm going to run the program again, and it'll be right there, and you can see our overweight works. All right. So I'm going to do one more. And this last one is going to be obese Olga. And let's make her real short. So she'll be 48 inches. And we'll make her 300 pounds. All right, and again, I'm going to take the overweight Oscar and comment that out. Save, run this. And it's got her, she's not in good shape. All right, all that makes sense? Now, when I get all done, I'm going to come back and take every line that I commented out, and I'm going to uncomment it. So I can see all of them. You don't have to do that. It's going to give you a lot more output. But now I can see everybody. There's my default where I changed it. There's my underweight, there's my optimal weight, there's my overweight, and there's my obese. Does all that make sense? All right, we're going to take another break in just 1 second. Let's do one last thing, though. All right, and that is let's go in and grab. We'll do it after the break. It's 2:43. Let's come back at 3 o'clock. All right, we're going to copy the information in BMI.java into another program. Okay, so you can do that when you get back.